except of course it is much, much wider. Big boy, fat boy, like me. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know that my biggest advice when buying lights is to buy the brightest, most accurate light your budget can afford. That's because anytime we modify a light, we are either losing the spread of that light or we are losing the intensity of that light, or both. The same is true no matter what the lighting fixture is. And today we are looking at a tube style LED light. Should be pretty obvious, they're hanging out right there. These are the Quasar Science Rainbow 2 and Double Rainbow lights. Rainbow 2 or the Double Rainbow over here. As always, if you want to repeat something that we've gone over or skip ahead to something that you feel is more relevant to you, time codes are right here and in the playhead below. But before we get into all the specifics about these lights, let's look at a short scene that we put together using them. Now that is one use case for these lights, right? You can either Hollywood a light, you could use it as an external walk and talk, you could put it in an interior where we need something that can have battery power, but also be really large, really soft light that we don't then have to worry about seeing. A lot of use cases for that. But today we're not talking quite as much about how we light things as much as what these lights are themselves. So let's dive in. I want to talk a little bit about brightness to accuracy, which is something that is, in my opinion, the most important part of a light. And for these metrics, we're going to be talking about the 4-footers because that's the most comparable across the spectrum. The Rainbow 2 and the Double Rainbow are insanely bright lights. Here's a handy chart for you so that way you can kind of keep track as we move through this, but the Quasar Science Double Rainbow has a lux readout of 148 lux at 3 meters. The Rainbow 2 here has 92 lux at 3 meters. These are all measured, by the way, against 5600 Kelvin. And then when you compare that to the Nanlite Pavotube 230X, that has only 84 lux, and the Astera Titan tube actually only has 81 lux. Again, both at about 5600 Kelvin at 3 meters. That means that this light is 76% brighter than the Pavotubes and 83% brighter than a Titan tube. So in terms of brightness, these lights are insanely bright when compared to what else is on the market. The Rainbow 2 and the Double Rainbow have a CRI rating of 95 plus, which puts them on par or in line with the competitors. So you're not losing quality of light, you're just gaining brightness. So going back to what we talked about at first, the brightest light that is accurate, that your budget can afford, should be the light that you go for. And these blow everything else out of the water. That said, these lights don't have internal battery. On its surface, that could sound like an issue or a problem, right? Something that people really want to have. But let's talk about that for a second. Some of the other lights have internal batteries. They are fixed within the light themselves, and they are not able to be exchanged or replaced, which means that when you run out of battery power, that's it. The light is chalked until you then charge it back up, plug it into AC power, whatever. That to me is an issue because that's going to really limit the runtime that I have on those lights, or that I have to then run power to those lights to then get more out of them. In fact, the Pavotube 230X, which is their 4-foot version of that light, you only get 1 hour and 26 minutes on a battery charge. And with the Titan tube, you only get 1 hour and 45 minutes with theirs. So you're getting less than 2 hours of battery life out of those lights before those lights then either need to be plugged into power or recharged, which is not a whole ton of time, especially because I can't just swap batteries out. Those are the batteries. So having that, while on its surface sounds like a good idea, in actuality, having the limited amount of runtime that those offer makes it a little bit less exciting to me. Now, this light, no internal battery, that doesn't mean that you can't run battery power off of it. And in fact, when you pair something like this light here, or any of these lights for that matter, with a small micro V mount, like this guy here, which is the Titan Micro 90, you can actually get quite a lot of power to this light. But the better part about that is that you can then exchange these out, right? So if I had a handful of these, when I'm running the light, if the light then loses power, you then can just swap the battery out. I can simply just take this guy, drop one and another. I can mount a V-mount battery onto this light and have an interchangeable battery option for the light that's going to give me much more power than you would get with the internal batteries. And to run power to the actual light, we would need a cable like this, which takes us from that DC barrel plug here on the side to this P-tap port here, which of course is also available on the battery itself. In this case, it's available here on the top. So if I move that out of the way, I can then take this guy, plug this in here, and then I can take the other end and I can plug it in over here. So now the battery is plugged into the light, and I can then use this light however I need to with that option. Now, this cable is relatively long. I think it's like 10 feet, give or take, but that then of course means that we don't have to mount the battery on the light itself. So if we do find ourselves in tight spaces, if we're lighting the interiors of cars or small interiors and that kind of thing, we don't want to light the battery plate onto the light, we of course can then have that off of the light hanging on the stand or somewhere else close by and run power that way. So that's a cool option to have there. And then of course with all of these quarter 20s, you can then do cable management pretty much however you want. This is the 2-foot light, but the things that we're going to be talking about are the same on the big boys. We have this diffusion panel here across the front for our tube. This is what gives us that wide beam angle. The rest of the build of this light is metal, which is different than some of the competitors that lean a little bit more heavily on plastic. Over here on this side, we have our menu. On the corner here, we have the power button followed by this pause button. So once you have the light programmed, you don't have to power the whole light down. You can just use this button here and pause the light. So it'll turn it off temporarily and put it into standby mode. Then you have a linking button underneath that for our outputs, things like DMX and wireless, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Left and right, and then of course our enter button, a small LCD display to then allow us to see what it is that we're doing. This one still has the plastic on it. Hold on. Oh, that's great. So that's the interface that we have here. On the end, we have a couple of options here. We have a USB Type-C. This is how we would update the firmware of the light. We then have our DMX in and out, and then a small DC plug here. On the other side of the light here is where we would have our standard mains power. Now on the back of the light here, you'll see that there's kind of this heat sink that's built into the light. This allows us to run it for however long we need to run it without the light overheating. And then over the top of that is this rail system. This is called the Osmium mounting system. Allows us to have a lot of flexibility with how we want to go about mounting things. We have a whole bunch of quarter 20s. This rail system works identically to a NATO rail. I believe the width is different, but the function is the same. We have 2 safety catches on the ends. So we have a lot of different ways that we can mount this. Now this is the double rainbow. Again, this is the 2-foot, that's the 4-foot over there. Everything about this light is identical to the Rainbow 2, but you can see here, this is a fat boy, right? We're talking wide. That's because it has 2 rows of pixels down the light, effectively making this 2 lights in one fixture. It's obviously brighter, a little bit heavier, but it still uses the same Osmium mounting system on the back. Over here on this end, we have a little bit different here in that we have our DC power in for our P-tap system there. We have our standard industry mains in there, and then we actually have both of our DMX in and out on that side. The reason why we have all of those external facing ports over here is because on this side is where we have all of our menu structures. Power button, linking button, our standby button there, and then our left, right, and enter, and then the USB-C port here on the bottom there with the LCD across. So really the only difference between these two lights is this, of course, is double the light, and we have just rearranged where some of the ports are. Instead of being front facing, they're side facing, and all of our external ports are on one side. Shy of that, this is the same thing, and this thing is a monster. The amount of light that you get out of this thing for the size of it is insane. We have a lot of accessories available to us. Accessories like this here. So this guy is a great little knob which allows us to mount onto standard light stands and that kind of thing directly from the back of the fixture. So we would simply disassemble this real fast, screw these in however we want to any of these 1/4-20s, depending on how we wanted to mount the fixture. And then we have a very fast way of tightening this and securing this to a stand. Again, this, like with everything on this light, is made entirely out of metal. It is extremely robust. You're not gonna have to worry about babying your light because this thing is not going to break. You will break much sooner than this thing will. Another thing, of course, is we can then utilize the rails instead of the 1/4-20s, and then I can mount this post anywhere I want to within the rail. So depending on how I want to have it configured, I then have a baby pin post right off of the back that I can also put a safety chain, and it has this end cap here. And then in addition to that, there's also the cheese plate here on the bottom of that. So that is a great mounting solution as well. And then in addition to this, we have covers just like this that go on either end. And in addition to, of course, not then just having this like big hard metal ends to everything, it also then gives us covers for all of our ports on all of the sides of our light. That said, this is not IP65 or anything like that. This is something you'd want to use in dry areas, not in the rain and that kind of a thing. Going back to the rails though, this is the thing. Here are high intense rare earth magnets. So these are super, super strong magnets. I could, if I wanted to, mount them right onto the light itself and then, you know, mount it onto something that's metal. I could also put these onto Noga arms or friction arms and mount them in other ways. That way you can use this as like a car mount. These pads, by the way, have this really nice rubberized coating over the top of them, very similar to how this feels. So that way you can confidently mount this with these really, really, really intense rare earth magnets, knowing that these are going to hold your light wherever it is that you put it, but the rare earth magnets themselves aren't going to then end up like absolutely destroying whatever it is that you put them on. There are other accessories that you can mount and stuff, but those are the ones that I have on hand. Regardless, when you buy a light kit, you can then order it with those accessories included, or you can add those on separately on your own. But that versatility or that scalability of the mounting of the light, to me, makes this thing really, really, really useful in terms of how we can mount it on stuff. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual menu structure and function of this light here, okay? So I'll power that guy on, you'll see that guy there. And then here in this, you'll see that I'm set currently into manual mode. Now, I have this power button here, which allows me to, of course, power this on and off. But the nice thing about this button here, which is this pause button, is that I don't lose power to the light itself, but I don't have to have the light on blasting me in the face as I'm trying to actually navigate the menus of the light. Okay, so that's a cool button there. So we're gonna, again, on, off, we're gonna leave it off for now. You'll see here, so now I have this little screen here, and if I push this over button like this, I have a bunch of different controls over what I'm doing here. So again, we'll go back here kind of to the beginning. The manual mode, which is the mode that I'm in here. If I flip this over here, the first thing that I have is intensity. I do have the ability to adjust this light from 1 to 100 in increments of 1. Okay, so there you go, push this here, and then I can move on. Then I have the color temp. Right, this of course is the CCT value, which is measured in Kelvin of the light itself. So right now it's set to be pretty warm. I could come in here and I can adjust this and I can cool this off should I want to, make it more daylight balanced like this. So that's color temperature. We can then of course move on, and then this gives us our tint or our offset. This allows me to move things into green or magenta, which between having the CCT readouts and having these tint or offset readouts, I'm then able to color match this light to any lighting environment I'm in. So if I get a color meter and I get a readout of a particular area, I don't just have the control over the CCT, I also can control the tint or the offset there. So that full spectrum control, just in terms of my white light, is extremely valuable. Moving on though, we go in here, and then of course I then have my saturation options as well as my hue options, right? My saturation options, this is where I can start getting into the wonderful world of color. Again, this is a full spectrum light, meaning that I can key in any color that I want. So saturation right now is set to 0 because I'm playing in the world of white light. But if I was to move this and change this over, all right, let's put the saturation here at 100, perfect. And then moving into our hue, bink. Okay, so now here. So then with hue, if I come in here and I turn this, you can see I can then adjust this color to anything I want. So that's wild because I'm then able to adjust the saturation or the intensity of that light color in addition to the specific hue that that light is hitting. Now, this brings up another interesting thing in terms of color. And again, I'll turn this off real fast. Boom, there you go, standby mode. Fantastic. That brings up an interesting point though, which is the color intensity to saturation and hue. Most RGB lights or full spectrum lights, lights that are able to give you any color that you want, actually emit different colors at different intensities. Blue, for example, is the one that is going to clip first. That light generally will be the brightest light at its given hue and saturation. The next would be red, and then so on and so forth down kind of the color spectrum, which means I can take the exact same light at 100% intensity and have different lights all hooked up to different colors, and the intensity readout, even though they're all 100, is going to be vastly different, some being much brighter and some being much dimmer. Now, the engineers over at Quasar Science, I was talking to them, they're much smarter than I am, and I don't know what kind of black magic sorcery or witchcraft they had to do, but they have gone through and in all of these lights, which is the Rainbow 2, the double rainbows, again, 4 foot, 2 foot, 1, doesn't matter. They have engineered the lights to be the same intensity at all color outputs. Now, this doesn't necessarily sound like something that's earth-shattering right off the bat, but the thing is that I could take the same lights and I could dial in a color and I can get my readout and I can make sure that my exposure is set and I can do all of that. But then if I want to tweak the color, I can tweak the color with confidence, knowing that it's not going to change the lighting environment in terms of intensity or output that the light would be giving me. Whereas with other ones, if I'm going to recolor something, or if I'm going to change the hue values of something, or if I'm going to change the, saturation levels of things, that is going to directly impact the amount of light that it puts out. I'm gonna have to remeter those, and I'm going to have to adjust my camera settings for that new exposure value, where with these, I get the exact same exposure value no matter where I'm at in that spectrum of light, which is nuts. The next is, of course, our CT readouts, which is going to be our standard Kelvin readouts, and I have a lot of options from 2,000 to 10,000, so you can see here I can cycle kind of through all of this depending on what I'm doing or where I'm going. I can make that happen like that. Then we have color presets. Color presets, again, like CT presets, I can have just individual colors, so red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, violet, so on and so forth. I can kind of go through all of this stuff here. Next, we have effects. This, of course, is a thing that everybody loves to have and people don't use all that often. Great to have when you need it. But in terms of how often I use lights versus how often I need given effects out of those lights, few and far between. That's just how I am. Maybe you exclusively use effects, which I'd like to see what kind of work you do if you do, but you might, right? So we have those options here. So under effects here, you can see here, let's go here, none, and then I can say here, I've got rainbow. This is kind of the standard effect that just starts off the effects thing. We have other effects that are available to us though, things like short circuit, paparazzi, strobe, fire, emergency, something called demo, apparently, and then none, which is of course what I'm going to be using right now. Then we have, of course, our menu options where we can kind of configure things here. So this is where we'd have our DMX control, the number of pixels that we're going to have firing, different profiles should we need that, wired settings, wireless settings, again for DMX and other types of connectivity here. Lot of different options here, but one of the ones that I want to talk about here is this output mode. So I can put it in low mode, normal mode, or high output mode. The high output mode is, of course, what's going to give you the full intensity of this light. Normal is going to be a midsection of that, and then low is going to be what controls kind of the bottom 25% of output that this light has. The reason why we have these modes is because it gives us a little bit more specified control over that intensity and adjusting the intensity of that light. So if I'm in environments that I don't need a super bright light, putting it in low output mode means that the scale from 1 to 100 is just controlling the lowest 25% that this light output has, which means that I'm getting a lot more fine detail control over what this light can do other than just having 1 to 100 in terms of percentages. It gets a little heady, a little weird, but I do like the fact that I have really, really precise control over this light to fractions of a 1 instead of just 1 to 100. I have a power on option, which just means that when do I want the light to turn on? Do I want it to turn on when I plug something into it, or this little input thing, or do I want it to be just with this power button? I generally leave it on the input because going back to the battery, if I'm swapping out a battery after the light, dies, I want the light to turn back on to the last settings that I had it on without me necessarily having to push the button, especially if I have the light super high and I have the battery down low in a place that I can functionally use it. I don't want to then have to push the power button on the light to get that power back, but you do have that option either way depending on how you're using it. And then you get basic things like your status LEDs, whether you want those on, the language that you're operating in, how many hours you have on the lamps themselves, some other things, what firmware you're on, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we don't need all that. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so we go back out here and then we go back to our main menu there. So as you can see, huge control over this light. And even though we're talking about a 3-button menu system here, it is super easy to navigate, to get in and out of, to get the exact settings that I want, and I can dial things in exactly as I need to. Some of the other menu structures on some of the other lights, I have used them all. They're not all created equal, just like cameras, right? Sony paying. But this menu works very, very, very seamlessly, very, very, very easily. It does not take a whole lot to get the hang of it. So, if you've been in this game for any length of time, chances are you have purchased something that shortly after you bought it and invested your money into it, you as a filmmaker outgrew it. In this business, we're constantly learning and growing and becoming better, and the tools that we have access to are constantly improving in terms of quality, and the price of those things are coming down. In addition to buying the brightest, most accurate light you can, buying a light that you can grow into is something that's also important, which is why a light like this is super interesting, because you have wireless DMX, you have wired DMX, you have industry mains, you still have Bluetooth and wireless connectivity in terms of Wi-Fi, so you get a lot of that control where you might not be somebody who's using DMX right now or needs DMX control right now. But that's not to say that you're not going to. At some point, the scale of your productions is going to be something that having DMX, whether wired or wireless, is going to matter, right? Having standardized power in is going to matter, right? When you scale up, where it's not just you by yourself anymore, having gear that is able to maintain a workflow at a higher level is not a bad thing. In fact, it's something that's going to make your kit last longer. Because admittedly, the Quasar Science tubes are more expensive than the Pavo tubes, right? They're not as expensive as the Titan tubes, and in my opinion come with more, so I feel like you're winning out with this over that, but the accuracy matters. The brightness matters. The functionality of the light matters, right? Again, we have full spectrum light in this. We're able to put any sort of hue, saturation, color, CCT that we want to in a light like this, while having all of the ports to make this scalable with us. That's what makes this light such an impressive tube light in the world of LED tube lights. You know the type of filmmaker that you are. I know the type of filmmaker that I am. There are different tools for different filmmakers. But when you are buying lights, which you should always buy lights. Lights are more important than your camera, they're more important than your gimbal, they're more important than almost anything. Invest in lights, invest in lenses. That's gonna save you a ton of time and a ton of money in the long run by spending the money and investing in those two places. That said, different tools for different filmmakers. The things to consider when you buy a light though, the brightest, most accurate light for your budget. Step one. Versatility of a light in terms of its functionality, right? Having a full spectrum light with effects. I can dial in any color, I can dial in any CCT, I can dial in any tint or offset into a light. That's extremely important to me. Having effects is cool. I'm sure there are times where I will use the effects. Generally speaking, there are more times that I'm not using effects than I am using effects. But again, that's just me. Having mounting options is important, especially when we're talking about a tube light, right? Having something that's versatile, that's easy to mount, that has a system in place that you can either use with your current kit or with the accessories that you can get with this thing to then be able to use that, right? Hugely important. You want a light that is well built. You want a light that you don't have to worry about babying. The only plastic thing on here is this diffusion here. Quarter 20s and rails, huge. Cheese plates on accessories, massive, right? Having magnetic adapters, awesome. Battery power, huge, right? And having something that can grow with you as a filmmaker. Industry standard power options. Wired and wireless DMX in standard configurations, right? USB Type-C for firmware updates. All of that stuff really, really matters. If you liked this video and you want to see more stuff like this, do me a favor, go ahead and push that like button and then subscribe as well. And then push that little bell notification icon because that lets you know when I upload videos. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.